What I want to show you now is an example of a state diagram that has nested states. This is an absolute classic example, but I won't apologise for that because it's a classic for a reason. This is the state machine for a fan, okay, a fan controller if you like, since it's presumably supposed to be software in the end. Okay, so the fan has two major states. It can be off or it can be on, and I suppose I should possibly show, although strictly speaking this is optional, that it's going to be created into the off state. Okay. The interesting part though is that our fan is quite a sophisticated one, and if it's on, it has two different settings. It can be on and low, or it can be on and high. And if it's on and low, you can send it the up message, you can send it the up signal, and it moves to the high state. You can send it down, and it moves back to the low state. So we've got a little state machine inside a state of the big state machine. And this is often very useful, hierarchical state machines, the hierarchical use of states. Now, most of this is fairly self-explanatory at this point. Let's see. So, if you send it if it's in the off state and you send it the on message, then obviously it's going to become on. But is it going to become on and low or on and high? Well, we could have just had another start marker inside this state, just like we have for the main state diagram, and I could have just said it's always going to start low. But I've decided to show another little piece of notation, which is this H state. Now this is slightly different from a simple on state because it stands for history. So what this says is, if there was a previous time when we were in this state, then whatever substate we were in last time is the substate we go to when we enter this state from the outside again. I'll say that again. I'll say that again in the context of this actual example. Suppose we had the fan on previously, and previously the fan was on the high setting, and then we turned it off. Now when we turn it off, regardless of which substate it's in, it moves back to the off state. Okay? Then we turn it on again. The purpose of this history state is that it will move directly to whichever substate it was in last time. In our case, it will move to the high state because that's the substate it was in when we last turned it off. Okay? The history state has an arrow into the low state here just because that's the default. If there isn't any history, if this is the very first time we've been in this state, then we'll follow the arrow and in this case go to the low state. That's probably all I need to say, isn't it? Do notice that we have here a transition that goes from the outside of the large state going to the off state, and that means it doesn't matter where you are here, however complicated it is, even if it has lots of levels, you just jump straight out and go right off there to that state. We could also have had a transition that went directly from a substate to another state out over here, but that's generally speaking rather bad practice. It tends to lead to rather confusing state diagrams.